Chapter 1. Marked, then thrown away. The night of the blood moon was supposed to be sacred. But for Celine Thorne, it became the night she was torn in half. The forest pulsed with raw energy, every leaf trembling beneath the crimson sky. The pack stood in silence, gathered around the fire ring, their faces flickering with the light of ancient flames. Her heart thudded in her chest like it was trying to warn her. Because he was coming. Ronan Kale, alpha of the Black Ridge Pack. Her fated mate. Her curse. The bond had snapped into place the moment their eyes met 2 days ago, and it had nearly broken her. That night, her wolf howled, her soul surged, and every nerve in her body burned with the need to be near him. But he had looked at her like she was dirt. A mistake. A glitch in fate. And tonight, he would make his rejection public. She stood tall, her silver blonde hair braided tight down her spine, the ceremonial dress clinging to her trembling body. Her wolf paced inside her, confused, wounded, begging for an answer. But Celine already knew the truth. He didn't want her. The fire roared as Ronan stepped into the circle, every inch the dominant alpha, broad shoulders, jaw carved from stone, eyes like storm clouds. The pack parted in silence as he moved. Even the flames seemed to bow to him. He stopped 3 feet in front of her. "Celine Thorne," he said, his voice clear and cruel. "You are not my choice." The crowd inhaled sharply. Murmurs spread like a plague. Celine's breath caught. "I reject this bond," he continued, "and I reject you as my mate." Something cracked in her chest. Her knees nearly gave out. But she didn't fall. Instead, she looked up and met his eyes with the same fire burning in her bones. "I accept your rejection," she whispered. Her voice didn't shake. And as the words left her lips, the bond between them shattered. It didn't fade. It exploded. Pain ripped through her like a blade. Her heart clenched. Her wolf shrieked in betrayal. She staggered back, gasping. The fire roared higher. The sky turned black. And then Celine fell, her body hitting the ground with a thud that echoed like a death sentence. She awoke in darkness. The pain was still there, but something else had taken root beneath it. Power. It was faint at first. A pulse in her gut. A flicker in her blood. But it grew with each breath. She sat up slowly, her skin damp with sweat, the ceremonial dress now torn. Her fingers dug into the earth. She wasn't dead. She wasn't broken. She was changing. In the shadows of the ancient woods, a voice whispered inside her mind. "He has rejected you. Now rise." She blinked. "Who's there?" she whispered. "You." And just like that, her blood began to sing. Back at the fire circle, Ronan turned his back without a glance. His beta, Kellen, stepped beside him, eyes flickering. "You sure that was wise?" Kellen murmured. "She's nothing," Ronan said coldly. "She'll fade." "You felt it though, the strength of the bond." It wasn't weak. Ronan growled low. Exactly. That's what made it dangerous. You're afraid of her. Ronan's jaw clenched. I'm afraid of prophecy. And I'm not letting the stars choose my queen. But deep down, even he knew what he had done could not be undone. And she would not fade. She would rise. Celine wandered for hours, guided by instinct, by rage, by something ancient and electric. The forest felt different now. Alive. Watching her. She reached the ridge just as the first light of dawn cracked the sky. And that's when it happened. Her spine arched. Her hands burned. Her vision went white. She collapsed, screaming, as a storm of light exploded from her chest. The ground trembled. The birds scattered. And when the light faded, Celine wasn't just Celine anymore. Her wolf, silver, massive, glowing with threads of moonlight, stood beside her, breathing as one. She wasn't just a rejected mate. She was something more. Power moment. 3 days passed. Word spread through the nearby packs like wildfire. Celine Thorne had survived the Alpha's public rejection. Not only survived, but awakened a dormant bloodline. The bloodline of the first mother. The one who created the wolves. She didn't know what it meant yet. Only that she felt stronger. Quicker. Her senses sharper. Her dreams wilder. And her rage? Unstoppable. She would not beg. She would not hide. She would return. Not to ask for his love, but to take his crown. Back at Blackridge, the pack was restless. Wolves whispered of omens. Some said the blood moon had cursed them. Others claimed they felt a shift in the bond of leadership. Ronan snapped at everyone. His wolf was unsettled. His sleep broken. He hated it. He hated her. But her scent haunted him. Her pain echoed in his bones. He could still feel her in his blood. And that terrified him more than anything. Because rejecting her should have erased her. Instead, it had awakened her. Celine stood at the edge of the sacred pool, the moon high above her. Alone, but not lost. Her reflection shimmered. You will become what they fear, whispered the voice again. Her hands trembled as she lowered the pendant her mother left her into the water. It glowed. Visions exploded behind her eyes. Wolves kneeling. Alpha crowns burning. And her, standing at the head of them all, wrapped in silver and fury. She gasped. No, she whispered. I don't want revenge. Then take power instead, the voice urged. And Celine finally understood. She hadn't been rejected. She'd been released. Freed to rise. Not as a Luna, but as a queen. Chapter 2, She Who Rises from Rejection. The sacred pool still shimmered, its surface flickering with moonlight and secrets. Celine knelt at its edge, her reflection staring back like a stranger, silver hair tousled, eyes glowing faintly, skin kissed by the energy of something not quite human anymore. She had crossed a line. There was no going back. The girl who once cried for the attention of a cold-hearted alpha was dead. In her place stood a woman reborn under the stars, forged in rejection and now burning with an ancient fire. A slow, measured breath left her lips. She stood, wiping the damp soil from her palms. Something in the earth pulsed beneath her bare feet, an invitation, a challenge, a promise. Celine was no longer just a cast-off. She was the beginning of something far bigger than vengeance. She was awakening. The wind picked up as she walked through the woods, her senses sharpening with every step. The moon guided her path, and with each passing hour, her power grew steadier. Quieter. Her wolf no longer whimpered from betrayal. It stalked in her soul, calm, calculating, patient. And when she reached the summit of Black Hollow Ridge, where the ruins of an ancient watchtower stood, she finally saw them, 3 figures waiting in the stone circle. Elders. Not of Blackridge. Of the Wild Moon Order. Wolves older than history. She didn't speak. She simply stepped forward, and they bowed. "You felt it too," she said. The tallest, an old woman with hair like snow and eyes like midnight, nodded slowly. The Alpha Queen awakens. "I didn't ask for this," Celine whispered. "Power doesn't ask to be claimed," said the second elder, a man with clawed hands and ceremonial runes on his chest. "It chooses the wounded. The rejected. The ones who bleed and don't die." Celine swallowed. "What happens now?" "You walk the path of fire and blood. And if you survive it," the woman smiled faintly, "you will rule not just a pack, but all of them." Celine's breath caught. All of them. Meanwhile, in Blackridge, Ronan could feel it. Something in his bones throbbed, like a drumbeat out of sync with the world. His wolf snarled at the edges of his control, pacing, growling, restless. It had been 5 days since the rejection. 5 days since her eyes locked with his as she collapsed to the earth. Glorious, defiant, broken. And now? Now the air around him was thick with her scent. He stood in the training yard, fists wrapped, shirt discarded, sweat clinging to his back. Kellen sparred with him, but Ronan barely noticed. Every punch landed like it was underwater. "You're distracted," Kellen said, blocking a strike. "Shut up," Ronan growled. "You still feel her?" Ronan flinched. "I thought the bond was broken," Kellen pressed. "It is," Ronan lied. But it wasn't. Not fully. She was still there. Like a whisper in the back of his skull. Like moonlight he couldn't outrun. Celine stared at her reflection again. The elders had taken her to a hidden glade, where moonstones grew wild from the ground and the wind sang in a tongue only wolves could understand. It was here the Alpha Queen ritual had first been performed, centuries ago, by the wolf goddess herself. "Drink," the elder instructed, handing her a chalice carved from black obsidian. Celine hesitated. This will complete the break from the mate bond. And it will seal your new path. Celine took it with steady fingers. Her lips touched the rim. The liquid burned, silver and sharp and alive. She dropped to her knees as a flood of memories not her own ripped through her mind. Women with glowing eyes. Wolves crowned in starlight. Blood spilled on snow. And a crown forged in rejection. When the visions passed, Celine collapsed, breathing hard. Her body shimmered with power. She was no longer a wolf of any one pack. She was the heir of the wild moon. The queen of the rejected. By nightfall, she returned to the edge of Blackridge territory. She didn't sneak. She didn't hide. She walked into it like it already belonged to her. The guards at the outpost froze. Celine, one of them, gasped. She raised her chin. Tell your alpha his mistake has returned. They didn't stop her. Couldn't. Her presence was too much. Her scent too strong. Her wolf too commanding. She walked through the gates and into the town square, where wolves whispered and children peeked from behind stalls. Mothers stared, and old men dropped their baskets. She was legend come alive. Ronan heard the commotion before Kellen did. He stepped out onto the balcony of the main house, shirtless, wind tousling his dark hair, and there she stood. Celine. The girl he threw away. But this wasn't the same girl. This was a goddess in moonlight. Her silver hair glowed. Her eyes were lit from within. Her power rolled off her in waves. And his wolf whimpered. She entered the house uninvited. Wolves backed away from her. Even the beta lowered his gaze. She found Ronan in the great hall. Their eyes locked. He tried to speak, but nothing came. Miss me, she said flatly. He growled. You shouldn't be here. But I am. The bond is broken. Is it? She said with a sly smile. Because I still feel you. He took a step closer. What do you want? Celine didn't blink. To show you what rejection really looks like. She held up the moonstone pendant. It glowed with the power of 1,000 broken bonds. You're not the alpha anymore, she whispered. Not really. Not since the moment you rejected fate. He lunged. She caught his wrist mid-air, twisted, and dropped him to one knee. Gasps filled the room. Ronan's eyes went wide. You, he choked. What have you become? Celine leaned in, her voice like silken steel. Stronger than you. Chapter 3, The Alpha Who Lost Everything. Ronan's knee hit the stone floor with a bone-jarring thud, the pain sharp, but not nearly as brutal as the humiliation surging through his blood. Around them, silence reigned. His warriors stared in disbelief. No one moved. No one dared. Celine stood above him, taller somehow, brighter, her aura a living force that bent the air and made even the walls seem to lean toward her. And she had just dropped him with a single motion. His pride twisted in agony. His wolf howled in protest, wounded by the truth of it. Selene had come back. And she wasn't just powerful. She was something else entirely. Something more. Her hand released his wrist slowly, as if giving mercy. But her eyes didn't soften. "I didn't come here to fight you, Ronan," she said, voice steady as steel. "I came to show you what your rejection created." Ronan rose with effort, jaw clenched, heart pounding. "I don't need a show." "Too late," she whispered. "You're standing in it." She turned her back to him without fear and addressed the stunned crowd. "You watched him reject me. Humiliate me. Throw away our bond like it was a burden." Gasps echoed across the room. Whispers broke out, but no one interrupted. "You thought I'd disappear. That I'd crawl away in shame. That I'd break." She stepped forward, each word a blow, each syllable cutting deeper than claws. "But I didn't break. I awakened." Selene's voice rang like thunder. "The wild moon legacy runs in my blood. I carry the mark of the Alpha Queen. And I don't need your permission to rise." The ground trembled beneath her feet. Someone, an elder warrior, dropped to one knee. Then another. And another. Ronan's chest tightened. His pack was kneeling to her. She didn't command them. She didn't ask. They chose. Because power didn't need to shout. It simply was. Later that night, Ronan paced alone in his chamber, the moonlight slicing through the high windows in pale slashes. He gripped the edge of his desk until his knuckles whitened, trying to keep the fury from overtaking him. How had it come to this? He had done what was expected. He had rejected the bond before it could destroy him. Before she could. The prophecy, it had warned him. The Alpha Queen rises from the one you cast aside. Her crown will be forged in your regret. And now every line of that prophecy was becoming real. He could still smell her on the air. Still feel the ghost of the bond, frayed but not dead. And his wolf. The beast that had obeyed him his whole life was no longer loyal. It was hers now. It whined for her. It ached for her. And Ronan was left standing in the ruins of his own dominance. Selene stood at the edge of the cliff that overlooked the valley of Blackridge. The same cliff where Ronan had once crowned himself Alpha 5 years ago, on the night of his father's death. Now it was her turn. Only she wouldn't be crowned by bloodline. She'd be crowned by power. By choice. By truth. The warriors of the neighboring ridge packs had come, Silverfong, Hollowbrook, and the shattered remains of Stonebite. They brought word, the old ways were ending. The wolves were changing. And they were looking for someone to lead them into the storm. Not an alpha by name. A queen by force. The ceremony was simple. She stood barefoot on the stone, moonlight wrapping her like a second skin. The wild moon elders chanted, the runes around the circle glowing faintly. She raised her arms. And when the crown of light settled on her brow, every wolf within 100 miles howled at once. Ronan heard it from the balcony. His breath caught in his throat. His wolf roared. She had taken the sky. And she hadn't needed him to do it. Kellen entered his chamber at dawn. "Say it," Ronan growled, without turning. "She's been accepted by the Eastern Ridges. The Hollowbrook Alpha just pledged fealty." Ronan's eyes darkened. "She's forming her own pack. Not just a pack. A kingdom." Ronan turned slowly, his face like stone. "I should have killed her." Kellen gave him a long look. "You couldn't then." "You sure you could now?" The question lingered like smoke. 3 nights later, Selene stood before a war table of her own. Maps stretched beneath her fingers. Every territory had been marked. Except Black Ridge. She hadn't touched it yet. Not because she couldn't. But because it wasn't about territory. It was about truth. And one last thread that had to be severed before she could fully ascend. The bond. It still pulsed deep inside her, faint but present. Ronan hadn't truly let go. And until he did, he remained a weakness in her power. That would change soon. She sent him a message. A single sentence, written in her own hand. "Meet me at the Moonstone Glade. Come alone. No seal. No threats. Just a choice. To finally sever what was left. Or drown in it." He came. Of course, he did. How could he not? Ronan stood at the edge of the glade beneath a sky bruised purple with twilight. The moonstone crystals shimmered in the ground, lighting the space with soft silver glow. She was waiting, back turned to him, dressed in simple dark robes, her hair cascading freely down her back. He could barely breathe. "Selene," he said. She turned slowly. And for the first time, he saw her, not the mate, not the threat, but the truth. A woman shaped by fire and forged in pain. And she was more beautiful than he remembered. But it was too late for beauty. "You shouldn't have come," she said, voice cold. "You asked me to. I needed to see if you were man enough to finish what you started." Ronan stepped closer. "What do you want?" Her eyes burned. "Freedom." The bond pulsed between them. Still alive. Still unfinished. "You never severed it," she said. "You rejected me. But your soul didn't." "I couldn't," he admitted. "I tried. I failed." "Then let me do it for you." She lifted her hand. A shimmer of light coiled in her palm, moon magic, ancient and hungry. "This will end it," she whispered. "Completely. No more whispers. No more ache." He didn't move. Didn't speak. Only watched as the power surged in her fingers. And then she placed her palm against his chest. He gasped. The bond flared. Then shattered. For real this time. Chapter 4. The Queen No One Saw Coming. The bond died with a sound like thunder and glass shattering in a sealed room. Ronan gasped as if the air had been punched from his lungs. He stumbled back a step, clutching his chest, eyes wide with something that looked almost like grief, but Celine didn't flinch. Her hand fell to her side slowly, fingertips still glowing faintly with the residue of magic that no alpha should have possessed. It was done. She had severed the last thread tying her to him. Not with vengeance. Not with hatred. With power. And that made her untouchable. For a moment, the glade was silent, no wind, no birdsong, no breath. The world held itself still to honor the shift that had just taken place. Then Celine spoke. "I'm not yours," she said calmly. "I never was." Ronan's gaze flickered. "You were meant to be." "No," she replied, turning her back to him. "I was meant to become." She left him there in the glade beneath a sky that now only answered to her. And as she disappeared into the trees, her wolf howled, a low, melodic note that echoed like a coronation. Back in the heart of her rising domain, Celine returned to the ancient council stone where the wild moon elders had first called her queen. A ring of pack leaders, emissaries, and warriors from territories once fractured now stood waiting. They had come bearing allegiance, not challenge. She didn't need to demand their loyalty. They gave it. Because they had seen the signs. The earth had cracked during her severing. The sky had whispered her name. And not a single alpha dared speak against it. "She's the one," muttered Elder Lisa, her long braids streaked with silver. "The one foretold. The one we feared and needed." Celine climbed the stone dais, cloak trailing behind her like midnight fog. "I'm not here to rule you," she said, her voice rising. "I'm here to lead us into what comes next." She raised her hand. "The age of dominance through blood is over. The age of fear ends with me." The wolves listened, motionless. I was rejected. Cast aside. Told I was weak. But the moon gave me power, and I claimed it, not by force, but by truth. She looked around. No one saw me coming. And that was how she won. Ronan sat alone in his war room, hands braced on the map table. Blackridge no longer answered to him the way it once had. The wolves were quiet in his presence. They avoided his gaze. Some even whispered behind his back. Celine's severing had done more than break their bond. It had fractured his power. He had seen the fear in their eyes the moment she left the glade. But it wasn't fear of her. It was fear that they had followed the wrong alpha. Kellen entered quietly, watching him. "You look like a man sitting in the ruins of his own kingdom." Ronan didn't respond. "She's not just gathering support," Kellen continued. "She's absorbing it. Packs are defecting overnight. Not just rogues, warborns. Elites." Ronan exhaled slowly. "She doesn't want revenge." "No," Kellen agreed. "She wants a future. That stung more than a blade, because it meant he wasn't part of it. Selene trained every morning with the war-born wolves of Hollowbrook, the elite fighters who had never answered to any alpha, not even their own. They now served her without question. One such morning, she stood in the center of the circle, breathing steady, hair pulled back and a braid crowned with moon-threaded silver. A challenger approached, a lean, scarred male from the east named Daros. Once a rogue, now a skeptic. "I want to test her," he said to the circle. "Not with blades. With blood." Selene stepped forward, calm. "Do you think I haven't bled already?" Daros bared his teeth. "Not at my hands." The warborns shifted uneasily. Selene smiled faintly. "Fine." She didn't shift. She didn't summon her wolf. She let him come at her, and within seconds, she had him on the ground, a blade at his throat. "You think I became queen by hiding behind teeth and claws," she whispered. "I am more than wolf." Daros blinked. And then, he bowed. By the time the next full moon rose, Selene's territory had doubled. Whispers reached the Northern Council. Elders spoke in panicked tones of a woman who had risen without mate, without alpha, without prophecy's blessing, but had fulfilled the prophecy anyway. And in Blackridge? Ronan stood in the shadows of his crumbling throne room, alone. Because when power leaves, it doesn't knock. It simply disappears. That night, a storm rolled in from the west. Selene stood at the balcony of the citadel her wolves had rebuilt, watching the lightning split the sky. Behind her, emissaries brought word. The southern territories had pledged. The last neutral stronghold had asked for a meeting. And a coronation was requested, formal this time. She should have felt triumphant. But there was still a storm inside her. Not from doubt. From the pull of something unfinished. Her power was still growing. And somewhere in the silence, something was calling her higher. She went to the ruins of the Moon Mother's temple alone. Only the wind accompanied her. She stood at the center of the stone ring, closed her eyes, and whispered, "I'm ready." The sky split. Light surged from the stones beneath her. And a voice not of this world answered, "You were made not to mate. Not to beg. Not to kneel. You were made to break what came before." Selene collapsed, weeping, not in pain, but in release. The temple awakened. And when she rose, her crown was no longer metaphor. It was real. Moonstone and ash. Woven from rejection. Sealed in truth. She returned with her crown. And every wolf dropped to their knees. Not because she demanded it, but because even the air around her bowed. Selene, once the forgotten girl of the ridge, was now Alpha Queen of the Bloodlands. And the world would never forget her name again. Chapter 5. He'll kneel or be forgotten. They said no Alpha had ever kneeled without bloodshed. Not once in recorded history. But history had never met Selene Thorne. She stood now at the peak of the Moonfong Citadel, the stone balcony stretching above a valley lit by thousands of torches. Below, wolves from every clan and fringe territory had gathered for what they believed was a coronation. But this wasn't a ceremony. It was a reckoning. And everyone knew it. Celine looked down at them, not with arrogance, but with gravity. She wore no silk, no jewels. Only black armor traced in silver filigree. Her long moon-blonde hair was braided down her spine, her crown resting lightly on her brow. To them, she was a miracle. To him, she was a threat. And she could feel him at the edge of the crowd, Ronan. Watching. Burning. Good. Because tonight, he would kneel. Or he would be forgotten. In the depths of the ridge, Ronan stood still, hands clenched at his sides, watching the queen he had once rejected now rule the entire bloodline. His wolf paced within him, guttural and restless. "You know what this means," Kellen said quietly from beside him. "If you don't kneel tonight, Blackridge loses recognition. Trade, alliances, protection." "She's not my queen," Ronan muttered. Kellen stared at him. "But she's everyone else's." "She was my mate." "No," Kellen said with quiet finality. "She was fate's answer to your failure." That hit harder than any punch. Celine raised her hand, and the murmurs ceased. "I was once the girl in the shadows," she said, her voice calm but piercing. "Rejected. Dismissed. Seen as weak because I wasn't claimed." She turned in a slow circle, letting them all see her. Feel her. "I needed no man to crown me. No alpha to legitimize me. I walked through the fire alone. And I emerged queen." Wolves howled their approval, the sound echoing across the cliffs. But Celine wasn't finished. "Before I accept your pledges," she said, her voice growing colder, "there is one last matter to settle." The entire crowd turned as she raised her chin. "Ronan Kale. Come forward." The name cracked across the silence like a whip. Every eye shifted. The man she had once loved, the one who threw her aside like she was nothing, stood rigid at the edge of the gathering, jaw clenched, shoulders squared. He didn't move. But Celine's next words weren't a request. "They need to see if an alpha can face the consequences of his own choices. If a man who once ruled without mercy can face the woman who rose in his wake." A pause. "Or if he'll run." The crowd stiffened. And then, slowly, like thunder building on the horizon, Ronan stepped forward. He walked in silence, every footstep dragging the weight of memory behind it. The wolves parted. Not because he ordered it, but because she did. When he reached the platform, they stood face to face again, two souls that had once been bound by destiny and now stood divided by it. Celine didn't blink. "You're here." "I am." "You know what this is." "I do." She waited. "Then kneel." Ronan's breath hitched. "I was born to lead," he said through gritted teeth. "Not bow." And yet here you are, she answered softly. With no pack, no mate, no crown. Her words were like silver-tipped arrows, sharp, fatal, true. You made your choice, Ronan. This is mine. She stepped forward. Kneel. Or walk away. But understand this, if you walk, no wolf will ever follow you again. You'll fade into history as a warning, not a legend. He said nothing. But the storm inside him swirled. His wolf was trembling. It knew. She was queen. Not because she demanded it. Because she had become it. And finally, after a lifetime of pride and command and unchecked dominance, Ronan dropped to one knee. The crowd inhaled. The wind howled. Celine's eyes shimmered, not with victory, with release. She stepped down from the platform and approached him. He remained kneeling, head bowed, not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. Say it, she whispered. His voice cracked. Alpha Queen. And in that moment, the last of the old world shattered. Because he had crowned her with his own surrender. And nothing would ever be the same. Later that night, the queen walked alone through the quiet courtyard of Moonfang Citadel, her fingers trailing the stone wall. She was no longer bound to him. No longer bound to anyone. And yet, there was a part of her that ached. Not for him. For the girl she used to be. She had loved him once. And in another world, another life, he might have loved her back. But that was over now. That girl had died the night he cast her aside. And in her place rose a woman who didn't just wear the crown. She became it. The next morning, emissaries arrived from the Northern Council. They came bearing offers. Alliances, shared power, sacred treaties. But Celine didn't need permission to lead. She wasn't here to join the council. She was here to replace it. And they knew it. She met their eyes calmly, then laid the queen's blade across the map of the territories. I don't want a seat at your table, she said. I'm building a new one. Across the continent, the legends began. Of the girl who had been broken and risen. Of the Alpha Queen who had no mate, yet ruled with more strength than any born Alpha before her. Of the wolves who bowed willingly, not from fear, but from awe. And in the center of it all stood Celine Thorne. Once forgotten. Now eternal. Chapter 6. The Legend They'll Never Erase. They carved her name in stone. Not because she demanded it, but because the world refused to forget her. Years passed. But the fire she lit on that mountaintop, when Ronan knelt and the old order died, never dimmed. It burned in every wolf that came after. In every pup who was told they were too weak. In every girl taught that strength only came when a man claimed her. Celine Thorne had rewritten the story. And the ending? Belonged to her alone. The new capital, Moonfang Citadel, rose from the cliffs like it had always been there. Its walls were carved with ancient runes and wild moonstone veins that shimmered in the dark. Her throne was not gold, nor bone, nor tradition. It was stone and silver, earth and light, alive with the memory of everything she had survived. Wolves came from distant lands just to glimpse her. Not because she was beautiful, though she was. Not because she was powerful, though she radiated it. But because when they looked at her, they saw possibility. A new world. A new way. And they believed in it because she had bled for it. Celine stood at the edge of the citadel garden, cloaked in night. No guards. No warriors. Just her. Beneath her feet, the moss was cool and damp. Above, the moon was full again. Round and watching. She tilted her face to the light, remembering. The rejection. The pain. The transformation. The slow, jagged climb into herself. And now, this. This peace. Not silence. Not stillness. But a peace earned by walking through fire and refusing to burn. She let her eyes close and whispered, "Thank you." To the pain. To the moon. To herself. Down in the courtyard, pups played with sticks shaped like swords. They howled and chased one another, shouting her name between laughs. Queen Celine. I'm gonna be like her. I'll fight the old way. Elder Lisa smiled as she watched from the garden wall. They don't fear you, she told Celine when she joined her. They worship you. Celine shook her head gently. They see what I gave them. Choice. No, my queen, Lisa said. They see what you took back. Power. And yet, even in all her glory, there were moments when Celine's thoughts returned to Ronan. He had stayed in Blackridge. He had rebuilt, quietly, never challenging her rule again. He never asked for forgiveness. And she never gave it. Because she didn't need to. The bond they once shared was a scar, not a wound. It didn't bleed anymore. But it didn't fade either. A message arrived at Moonfong one winter morning. No seal. Just ink scrawled in the old tongue. Thank you for becoming the wolf I couldn't. She read it once. Then burned it. Not out of hatred. Out of closure. Because she didn't need his words anymore. He had said them too late. And she had already risen without them. Spring came, and with it, the first Unity Summit. Celine stood before over 30 alphas, many of whom had once rejected the idea of a queen. Now they listened in silence, reverence in their eyes. I did not take your thrones, she said. You surrendered them the day you chose power over purpose. A hush settled over the valley. I won't rule like you did. I won't rule you at all. But I will stand as a reminder that strength isn't passed through bloodlines. It's forged. She turned. I was once a rejected mate. Her voice rose. And now? I am alpha of alpha blood. Queen of my own fate. and no one will ever erase my name again. Years later, the story of Celine Thorne became more than memory. It became myth. In every border village, mothers whispered it to their daughters. In every distant pack, wolves carved her sigil, a crescent moon surrounded by flames, into stone gates and birthmarks. In every battle for justice, her name was invoked. And when rogue males tried to tear her legacy down, they were met by daughters of her flame. One night, when Celine was older, wiser, and finally at peace, she returned to the Moonstone Glade. Alone. The place where it all began. The place she had been broken and reborn. She stood barefoot once again, closing her eyes as the light bathed her. The forest welcomed her home. The stones hummed, and a voice echoed softly in her mind. You did not just survive. You created a new world. She smiled. Not because she needed the praise, but because it was true. In the final record of her reign, scribes wrote these words. She was not chosen. She was not claimed. She was not made by prophecy. She was rejected. And in rejection, she became legend. The last line carved in the Moonstone throne was simple. Celine Thorne, the queen they tried to forget. But they never could. Because you don't erase fire. You survive it. You kneel before it. Or you burn. Epilogue, the flame that still burns. The glade was quiet. The stones, once humming with wild energy, now lay in peace. The moon was half full, its silver light cascading through the branches like a blessing. A young girl stood at the center of the circle. No older than 13. Eyes wide, heart trembling. She clutched a worn leather book to her chest, the last known journal of Queen Celine Thorne. She wasn't royal. Not by blood. Not by bond. But she had felt it. That same pull Celine once described. The fire beneath her skin. The ache of something wild, waiting to wake. Her mother had told her bedtime stories of the rejected queen. How she rose with nothing. How she ruled with everything. And now, standing here alone, the girl whispered the words carved into the glade's largest moonstone. They tried to forget her. She reached out and touched the stone. But I never will. Sensory rush. A pulse of warmth answered her. Not violent. Not overwhelming. Just there. Like a breath. Like an echo. And far away, beneath roots and rock, the ashes of the past stirred softly. Celine was gone. But her fire? Still burned. As the girl turned to leave, a feather drifted from the sky, silver, impossibly bright, and landed on her shoulder. She didn't flinch. She just smiled. The story wasn't over. It was only beginning again.